Hey everyone, today we're talking about the history of Mumbai. This entire video was generated by using AI. Without wasting the time, let's watch the video first.
Mumbai is India's financial engine, an unstoppable metropolis with a skyline that rivals New York or London. Today, it stands as a massive, unified concrete jungle, driving the world's fifth largest economy. But the solid ground holding up those skyscrapers is an illusion. If you strip away the pavement and the high-rises, you'll find that this megacity was originally an archipelago. It was made up of 7 distinct marshy landmasses: Bombay, Kalaga, Little Colaba, Mazagown, Parel, Worli, and Mohim, separated by treacherous tidal waters. For centuries, the only people who could navigate this muddy terrain were the indigenous Koli and Agri tribes. They built scattered communities across the islands, relying entirely on the surrounding sea for their livelihood. Over the centuries, control of these fragmented islands bounced between various Hindu dynasties and Islamic sultanates. Because the land was disjointed and difficult to build on, the rulers largely ignored it, leaving the islands as undeveloped outposts. That isolation ended as European empires began scrambling for dominance over Indian Ocean trade routes. Suddenly, this swampy archipelago became a critical prize in a global struggle for maritime control. In the early 1500s, Portuguese explorers arrived on the western coast of India. At the time, the islands belonged to Bahadur Shah, the ruler of the Gujarat Sultanate. Terrified of an impending invasion by the expanding Mughal Empire, Shah decided to buy Portuguese protection by handing over the 7 islands. The Portuguese called their new territory Bombay, meaning Good Bay, but they missed its geographic potential. Instead of developing a major port, they kept their operations small, using the islands mostly for the localized spice trade and religious missions. By 1661, the Portuguese were rapidly losing ground to the Dutch. Desperate for an alliance with England, the Portuguese king arranged a marriage between his daughter and England's King Charles II. To seal the deal, he packaged the entire archipelago of Bombay as a royal dowry, gifting the 7 islands to the British crown. King Charles had virtually no interest in managing a distant, swampy archipelago. He quickly turned around and leased the entire territory to the East India Company for a mere £10 in gold a year. The nominal lease price allowed the East India Company to treat the islands as a laboratory for geographic manipulation. They were free to reshape the land without the risk of heavy financial loss. The company desperately needed a secure stronghold on the western coast. Their main trading hub in Surat was becoming vulnerable to the massive armies of the Mughal Empire. Relocating their headquarters to Bombay would put them safely out of reach. Moving a corporate empire to Bombay revealed a massive geographical flaw. The tidal waters separating the 7 islands were a deadly obstacle course. Storm surges and unpredictable currents routinely smashed transport boats to pieces, destroying valuable cargo before it ever reached the open ocean. In 1782, Governor William Hornby stepped in with an aggressive solution. If the water was destroying their ships, they would simply remove the water. He launched an audacious civil engineering campaign known as the Hornby-Vellard Reclamation Project. Workers constructed massive stone causeways across the breaches to block the sea. Then they dumped thousands of tons of earth into the gaps. 6 decades of relentless earth-moving finally concluded in 1845, locking the 7 islands into a single continuous peninsula. Physically engineering a unified landmass removed the barriers to internal trade. This 60-year effort converted a fractured, vulnerable outpost into a hyper-efficient colonial port. With solid earth beneath their feet, the British initiated a massive wave of construction. Factories, enormous warehouses, and sophisticated custom houses sprouted across the reclaimed land, triggering an economic boom that drew workers from across the subcontinent. To move raw material even faster, the colonial government laid down heavy iron tracks over the newly filled earth. In 1853, India's very first passenger train rolled directly through the heart of Bombay. The British designed the city's architecture to project absolute authority. They built towering civic buildings and ornate railway stations, physically cementing Bombay as the undisputed financial heartbeat of their Indian empire. Grand stone monuments were erected along the waterfront, serving as the literal gateway for British monarchs and viceroys arriving to inspect their lucrative colonial asset. After India won its independence in 1947, the city experienced another explosive surge in population. But this rapid growth exposed deep fault lines. Control over the expanding city's massive economy remained largely concentrated firmly in the hands of the wealthy Gujarati business class, creating severe friction with the Marathi-speaking working class, who actually powered the factories. Those boiling tensions eventually spilled into the streets. Years of violent protests and fierce political organizing forced the government's hand. In 1960, the region was officially partitioned, creating the new linguistic state of Maharashtra, with the city serving as its capital. In 1995, the city shed its colonial title entirely, officially adopting its Marathi name, Mumbai. European empires engineered the very ground the city stands on, but the Indian people ultimately reclaimed its identity, proving that while geography sets the stage, it is the people who write the history.